talking about myself. Somebody asked me why I was moderating this event, and I had to tell them that it's really comes down to the curse of doing something well. If you do something well, you get asked to do it again. The principle, I think, applies equally to doing the dishes as it does to moderating forums. So previously, I've moderated an election forum or two in my time, and apparently I've done a decent enough job at those to be asked to do other things like this. As Cindy noted a little bit earlier on, I'm a prior president of the Lethbridge Chamber, and one of the reasons that the Chamber keeps past presidents around, I think, is to tap them for roles like this. So welcome all to the virtual town hall regarding the Mustard Seeds plans for the affordable housing development at the site of the Ramada Inn on Mayor Magrath Drive. Those of you in the room that are old enough will recall it as the Heidelberg Inn back in the day. So after we hear from Byron Bradley and also then from Taylor Kawaguchi, then we're going to have our Q&A session. So that will hopefully be about an hour long. We've received a number of questions through the Chamber's survey that went out late last week, and we're going to put those questions to our presenters for them to answer for us. You are also welcome to ask questions directly, or you are equally welcome to send in questions to us tonight, and I will in turn pose those to our guests. That's going to depend on the amount of time that we have and the type of questions that come in and that sort of thing. So a couple of notes regarding the Q&A session. If there are questions from the audience tonight, please send those in through the chat function so that we know what the subject of the question is, and that way that'll better allow us to fit it in within the appropriate portion of the Q&A session. I expect we will end up having more questions than we have time tonight. If we don't get to all of those questions, we will address that by submitting those questions to the Mustard Seed to be answered later on. The Chamber, as Cindy pointed out earlier, is also considering hosting another session a little bit later on so that we can maybe deal with some more questions if possible. So that's going to depend on a number of factors, and the Chamber will let everybody know what's going to happen with that. As far as tonight goes, unless you're Jeffrey Toobin, we've all become Zoom experts over the last year. But even so, the fact remains that this type of forum, this virtual forum, brings some unique challenges, and that includes ensuring that people can hear the speaker. To that end, we are going to maintain control over microphones in the room tonight, and we're only going to allow the microphone of the questioner and that of the person responding to be live during a question. Follow-up on any question from the audience will be allowed at my discretion. If you are asking a question, we have to ask you to keep any introductory remarks to an absolute minimum. We've only got an hour here, and it's going to fly by, and it's going to go even faster if everyone's taking 2 minutes to get to their question. And I can't stress this enough. I've moderated lots of forums in my time, and I can assure you that introductions to questions are, first of all, generally unnecessary, and second of all, they tend to chew up way too much time. So we will cut off questioners who ramble on too long without getting to their question. At election forums, I always ask the audience to be civil and on their best behavior, and there's rarely a problem with that, so I won't even mention that tonight. As I did mention earlier, the chat function is going to be available, and we're going to be monitoring any submissions that come through that way. If you want to ask a question, let us know what you want to ask about. We'll try to fit that in. We are recording this event for posterity, so I think we'll have a link up to this feed after we're done. That's about it for right now. So with that, I will call on Byron Bradley with the Mustard Seed. He's the managing director, to give us a bit of an introduction overview of Mustard Seed. So I will go muted and ask Byron to weigh in.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you, Cindy, Jared, and also all the dignitaries that are able to join us here this evening, like MLA Rachel Harder and others that may have come in later that we haven't mentioned already. It's an honor to be here with you tonight to share about the vision and the work of the Mustard Seed and our intentions to care for the most vulnerable men, women, and children in the city of Lethbridge. The Mustard Seed is a Christian nonprofit organization that has been caring for individuals experiencing poverty and homelessness over the last 36 years, since 1984. Operating in 6 cities across Western Canada and Alberta and BC, the Mustard Seed offers holistic support, providing for individuals' physical, emotional, and spiritual needs in order to create a healthy and sustainable independence in the lives of those that we serve. We hope that lives are changed at the Mustard Seed. The people that come to us for support, whether it's a young child or a senior citizen that comes our way, our hope is that for a season of their life, we can care for them, provide support for them, but then they would hopefully come to a place where they would be sustainable in the community and be a sustainable member of the community. Our vision is to eliminate homelessness and reduce poverty where we serve. It's a tall order to eliminate homelessness, but we strive to do that every day. And the root causes of poverty run very deep in each community. And each community, those root causes are very unique to that particular community. And so we work very hard at trying to understand what those unique needs are in each community. And with Lethbridge being the 6th city that we'd be looking at providing services to, that's no different. Although there are some similar challenges that those experiencing poverty in Western Canada face, there's unique challenges here in Lethbridge. And so we've been learning about those challenges, talking about those challenges with the community at large, and trying to address and answer to those struggles that people face in their daily lives. Our mission is to build hope and well-being for our most vulnerable citizens through Jesus' love. We really believe that people need to have hope in their lives. They need a reason to keep on keeping on, and we want to care for that whole person, for their whole well-being. Every human being that comes to a Mustard Seed property is accepted to come to the Mustard Seed. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you believe or don't believe in. If you are a person in need and come to our door, we want to help you out. As long as you have good behavior and you're respectful, we'll care for you. So whether it's one of the several hundred children that receive a fresh, nutritious lunch every school day, or the unfortunate story that I share sometimes of adults dropping off their senior parents at our door at 9 o'clock at night because they can't care for them anymore. Or maybe it's a teenager that has ran away and is looking for support, whatever it might be. Often the Mustard Seed is the last stop for some people that have experienced very, very deep traumas, gone through difficult times in their lives. And at the Mustard Seed, we want to be a soft landing pad for them, and care for them and meet them where they're at. We began our community engagement process back in October, and tonight is just one more step for us in our community engagement plan. And our goal throughout this process is one of our values is transparent accountability. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can. And we want to share with you the vision of what we're wanting to do and the lives that we're wanting to help here in the city of Lethbridge. Back in December, we presented to City Council and shared our vision of the initiatives that we're hoping to do here in the city. And then also in December, about a week later, we did a presentation to the Southern Alberta Council of Public Affairs, to SACPA. And like Cindy mentioned earlier, this will be the largest Zoom event that the City of Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce has hosted. That event at SACPA has more than double the attendance that they have ever received in their history. And so I think we're well on our way to engaging with a lot of citizens. And we've had, which Taylor and we'll talk about a little bit here in a bit, is how many citizens we've engaged over the last number of months. We've been very, very busy. And myself personally, I've been in the city of Lethbridge almost full time for the last 2.5 months. I want to just quickly talk about some of the misconceptions, the things that we're hearing often from the community, and say what we're not planning to do on Mayor Magrath at the Ramada site. This will not be a treatment center. This will not be a shelter for people. This will not be a place where people come for meals. This is not a drop-in shelter. This is a multi-tenant building similar to other multi-tenant buildings in the city of Lethbridge. The thing that's different about it is for people that cannot afford market rent. We have applied for the Rapid Housing Initiative funding with the federal government. And the whole essence of that community, to quote one of the members of government, is that, quote, our government wants to ensure that every Canadian has a safe and affordable place to call home. That is why we want to come to the city of Lethbridge. The mustard seed is in the business of providing safe and supportive places to people, whether it is helping them finding a job, whether it's providing them counseling to deal with their difficult mental health challenges. Maybe it's to connect with a doctor for the first time in a decade, or to find a safe and affordable place to live where they have dignity restored in their lives, or maybe dignity for the first time in a very long time. I've personally had the very excellent opportunity to help middle-aged people put keys in their hands to a place on their own for the first time in their lives. And it's pretty incredible just to see that growth and that person become a sustainable member of the community. This multi-tenant building will be similar to many other buildings in the city, as I've mentioned. They will have to go through a screening process like they would with a regular landlord or property manager. They'll have to do an interview with them. And definitely there would be a lot more thorough conversations and looking into this person than would be at a regular hotel, which is a lot more transient, where you'd have a lot more people coming and going from the property. We want to create safe and affordable places for people to call home. That is our goal. And also we're here to hear from you. We've been hearing from a lot of citizens over the last few months, and we really are excited to be here tonight to continue that very important conversation with you as a community, to hear your concerns and your questions. And so we thank you very much for coming on here this evening, and we hope to help answer some of those questions for you tonight. Thank you very much. And now we will pass it over to Taylor to share a little bit at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. As introduced, my name is Taylor Kawaguchi, and I work at the Mustard Seed, and I'm currently based in Calgary right now, but I've had a chance to come enjoy the city of Lethbridge many times, especially over the last few years. So thank you for hosting this event to the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce. We really appreciate it. According to the Municipal Housing Strategy, in 2019, there was an estimated 3,900 households that were in a core housing need. And that is the intention of what this project is to serve. We really want to work with the citizens of Lethbridge and the city of Lethbridge to help support that core housing need that's in the community. Byron spoke really well to quite a few things that are a little bit of the misperceptions that we've sort of seen just in our community engagement, but I will just re-emphasize a few other points here. As we mentioned, and as Cindy mentioned, we're talking about the rezoning application at 1303 Mayor Magrath Drive South. This will also include both the rezoning of the Ramada and the Chinook Motel, both of those properties, which are all part of the same parcel of land. So when we're looking at that, we're looking at 86 self-contained units between the two buildings. It's 66 in the Ramada and then 20 in the Chinook Motel. All of the programs that we speak about, all the affordable housing, all of our staffing models, they all appeal to both buildings. So I have had quite a few questions about that. So I just wanted to make sure it was clear of our intentions on the site there. As I mentioned, they are self-contained units. So they will be fully equipped with kitchenettes. That'll be part of the renovations that will be done on the space. So it'll be independent living. It's affordable housing with some additional light supports to provide a little bit of community and resiliency for people that may have been experiencing trauma, may have been experiencing poverty, and just need some dignity and some good supportive community. As I mentioned, this is talking about the rezoning, but for full transparency, the Mustard Seed has also applied for a development permit on the site, just concurrently with the city of Lethbridge. All decisions made on the development permit don't connect to the rezoning. We work through those processes a little bit separately, but just wanting to be aware of that, both of those processes are in the works. As part of this community engagement, this is not the last set of community engagement. We will announce at the end that there will be another date. But there also is a date that was just set today for the public hearing, which is February 9th. So that will be an opportunity for people to be part of that engagement process as well with City Council. And I will do my best to get more information to everybody here as we kind of learn a little bit more about how you register for that. Maybe we could have a city member speak to that today if they have the capacity to do so. As Byron mentioned, we have applied for the Rapid Housing Initiative funding that's through CMHC's National Housing Strategy, but we are also looking at multiple other funding avenues. I know we've had a lot of questions about that. So we're looking at private donations, capital campaigns, and multiple different options as well for funding. And we are looking for other ways to be supported for the operations as well, which would probably be a combination of working with government level contracts and supports, as well as private donations and private funders, foundations, grants, things like that. I know we will get into a lot of other topics and questions later, but I did just want to let you know as well, I've always been pretty transparent with anybody that I've been speaking to, that I'm more than happy to connect with anybody by phone or through email. So hopefully we can send all of the panelists' contact information after this to everybody that registered, just to make sure that that contact communication line is available as well. And that's all I have for right now. I'll turn it back over to Stephen. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much, Taylor, and also to Byron. Just before we launch into the Q&A portion, I wonder if, well, either of you, I guess, could just quickly outline a little bit more about the nature of the units themselves. Are these singles? Are they for couples? Are they family units? Can you just maybe give a little bit of background on that? Because I'm not sure that I've seen much information on that.
Sure, I can speak to that quickly, Stephen. It's pretty. So it'll be all bachelors, except there is one unit in the Chinook Motel that technically has 2 bedrooms. So it could be for a couple, or maybe facilitate like a single parent situation, but it would be very much case by case basis. So based on the size of the units, we'd probably accommodate singles and maybe couples depending on the situation.
Great, thanks very much. So at this point, we're going to go into the questions that we've already received. These fall into 4 categories, as Cindy outlined earlier. The first being questions directed about the location of this proposed development. Second being about community safety. The third being about resources and operations at the site. And the last being questions more directed towards the city end of things. So we'll start with location, and the first question that we have that was submitted to us for location is, what other areas in Lethbridge have you investigated for your affordable housing facility? How did 1303 Mayor Magrath Drive become the final choice? So if you could maybe speak a little bit towards site selection and what considerations went into that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Weil. I'm the silent one. But I asked if I could take maybe the first couple of questions, because I've been involved with looking for a location for a number of months over the last over this past fall and into the winter. It's important to understand that the funding for these apartments is coming from the federal government, and it's a rapid rapid housing initiative. Therefore, it narrows down the properties that might be available for us to purchase. And so by that, they have defined it as the only projects that they would be willing to fund are either projects that are in the ground ready. So they've gone through the permitting process, they've got all the drawing, they're just ready to start building. And of course, we don't have any of those projects in Lethbridge, but the other group would be for hotel conversion. And so that's why we have focused on hotels these last number of months. In fact, we looked at over a half dozen locations, and we took into account things like transit, grocery stores, the shapes the buildings were in. A couple of the ones that were defined as hotels, it would likely cost more less to rebuild the entire hotel. So we had to make some decisions, and the Ramada Inn was in great shape, and it had access to all of these other amenities, and so that's the reason why we chose the Ramada.
Thanks, Steve. I might add a little bit more to his comments there as well. So I might preface a little bit of talking of how we were looking into affordable housing in Lethbridge, even before Rapid Housing Initiative came into place. So we've had many stakeholder conversations, and we've been involved in the city of Lethbridge for a number of years, looking to engage the community in the best way we can, learn a little bit more what the unique housing needs would be for the clientele. And as part of that, we did apply for a funding process through the city of Lethbridge at the beginning of 2020. What year is it? COVID has really messed up my years. Yeah, so the very beginning of 2020, and as part of that, that would have been for providing affordable housing in the city of Lethbridge. And that really kick-started our consideration of whether we would look to renovate a non-residential building or begin a new construction. The Mustard Seed has always had a philosophy that we don't like to buy current residential buildings just to displace people and put different clientele into that. That's really a philosophy that we have across all of our sites. So the only options that we have is to turn a non-residential building into residential or new construction. And there's a lot of considerations that go into that in terms of sustainability. With how the real estate market and things have changed, there's a lot of extra opportunities for new sites and new locations that are not necessarily new construction as well, while still supporting many other groups such as construction firms and things in that process. So when the Rapid Housing Initiative came out as a funding option, it really kind of led us that in the sense of this would be a great opportunity to utilize some non-residential spaces and turn them into residential spaces that could be added to the housing stock in Lethbridge. As for the location in particulars, Stephen referenced that a couple times, but basically when we look for housing, we want to locate it in an area that's ideal for transit, as many people that live in affordable housing may not have their own form of transportation or may have bicycles, things like that, not so much cars or vehicles. Also wanted to have proximity to certain amenities such as grocery stores, access to like food locations, medical offices, you know, dentists, things like that. And just making it not like allowing it to be a little bit separated from the downtown core. We did look at a lot of options in downtown as well, and nothing really felt like a great fit. We wanted people to be integrated into community, take some ownership of their neighborhood and really integrate as best they can. So we did look at quite a few sites, hotels and otherwise, even for new constructions way back before the funding was announced. And we came across the site as it felt like a really good fit in between all the considerations that we had for sustainable housing for people.
Okay, thank you. If this site were to be unavailable, does the Mustard Seed have a secondary site in mind? And if so, are you able to tell us what that is?
Thanks, Stephen. At this time, we do not have a secondary site in mind. We don't have multiple rezoning applications in process. We're really, because we did so much of our due diligence trying to find the best site at the beginning, we're really at this point interested in this site for these particular reasons. If this site becomes unavailable, we'll likely be starting from scratch in terms of our assessment of what would be a good site for this type of building. But we don't have another one in mind right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks. We actually have a question that's coming from the floor from Greg Schmidt. Greg, I don't know if you want to ask that yourself or if you want me to ask the question. Can we unmute him?
Yeah, just a question. I mean, because the funding from the rapid housing is coming up, if you're unsuccessful in that, are you still able to move ahead with the purchase?
Maybe I'll speak to that a little bit. Didn't look like anybody unmuted anytime quickly. I believe we would still consider this location for sure, just because there is a little bit of opportunity in terms of the renovating the non-residential spaces into residential with this funding. We may look back and consider still if we want to consider a new construction site with a different location, just based on the cost per unit of purchasing this building versus what we could do on other sites. But we're still very dedicated to doing housing in Lethbridge, and whether it's the site or another based on how we can determine the need, we're really determined to find something to work. So that wasn't the best direct answer for you, but I think we would have to consider whether there's another option available to us or if this is still a great way to serve community. So maybe our CEO would like to speak a little to it as well.
Sure, I'll just add a few comments here. It would, to be honest, it would be very difficult for us to currently find another spot, finance it, fund it outside of this particular initiative from the federal government. So chances are no.
Well, there you have it. You have it at the more direct source than I.
Greg, did you have anything for follow-up on that?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Greg. Another question that we've received previously from the survey regarding location is, once this rezoning has been done, assuming it goes forward and the rezoning is done and the affordable housing project is underway, if the mustard seed can't find a new location for the homeless shelter or soup kitchen, will they decide then to move that into the 1303 facility? So kind of a Trojan horse type question, I guess.
Thanks, Stephen. And the answer is no. We would not mix a shelter or food services with a permanent affordable housing building. And that would have a different population base. It'd have people that are in the different stage of their life, different stages of change. And so no, we would not be having a soup kitchen type facility or an emergency shelter in the same building where people are living potentially for the rest of their lives. It wouldn't be appropriate.
Would that, Byron, would that disturb conditions on the funding, or are there conditions tied to that funding around usage?
The funding, the route that we're taking is for permanent affordable housing, and so it wouldn't line up for us at the Mustard Seed. There may be some other groups in other parts of the country that are accessing the funding for shelters, but for this particular initiative, that's not the route we're going. This is just primarily to help address the over 400 people that were on a wait list for housing, and to try to help those people where there's over 20% of people in the rental market right now that are spending more than 50% of their income for shelter, which is really unfortunate. And so, as Taylor said, we don't want to take away from any of the current market. We want to add to the market so that people, again, have dignity, have a safe place to call home, and then hopefully don't have to spend as much money on shelter so that they have more money for health and wellness, recreation, etc.
And so one of the conditions of this money is that it's only available to individuals or organizations that provide shelter for at least 60 days. So that would disqualify it from the funding. The other major piece of this funding legislation is that it is rent geared to income. So the maximum that an individual would pay for their apartment would be under 30% of their income.
All right, thanks. So another question related to location comes actually from one of our past presidents, Ryan Miller. Ryan, I don't know if you want to ask this yourself or if you want me to pose this directly. If you want to ask it, go ahead and unmute.
Go ahead, Stephen.
For sure. So the question is, are there advantages to locating this type of project, affordable housing projects, in a commercially zoned property as opposed to doing it in a residential zoned property or a residential area? And then there's a follow-up to that as well that a number of people have asked. And so I may as well get it out front right away. So, but I'll wait for the answer on this first.
I can do my best to answer that. I would say there's no advantage to doing it at a commercial site. Not that I've seen anyways. If somebody knows if there's an advantage, please let me know. But no, not that we're aware of. It's still the same rezoning process that we have to go through regardless. And because our rezoning is looking to put a direct control on site, regardless of whatever the current zoning it would be on, we'd still have to go through the same process.
Okay. Follow up to that, and a few people have asked it, is whether this property will contribute to property taxes or be exempt. And I would imagine that the Mustard Seed has some experience with that from facilities that it's operating currently in other places. So what's the lay of the land on that?
Well, I think it's pretty universal across, not just across Alberta, but across Canada. Nonprofits can apply for municipal relief for property taxes. And I think that's just pretty standard for nonprofits.
All right, thank you. Another question that relates somewhat to location and somewhat to operations. And I've seen this question come up in relation to other sort of transitional housing projects that I've kind of been dealing with in while wearing another hat, I suppose I would say. And that is around strategies to consult with nearby businesses, residents, community leaders, about the scope of services that are being run at the location and any potential concerns they may have. So when you open up and as you move forward, what are the strategies for sort of that outreach type of scenario?
Yeah, thanks for that, Stephen. I think community engagement for us isn't a one and done kind of situation. It's a really long-term commitment that we make to the neighborhood that we serve in, to our residents, to our staff, to our volunteers, to our neighbors, to the community in general. We really look to have as much open communication as we possibly can. So our community engagement process has only begun. Byron mentioned a little bit earlier, but as part of our rezoning application, based on privacy rules and restrictions, we were only provided addresses and information for the people and businesses within the 60 meters of the radius. That was our very first start, to get a letter out to community to address sort of what we were planning to do on the site. We gained a lot more feedback than people within the 60 meters, and we were so thankful for it because we wanted to be able to have these forums and to be able to get contact information and figure out how people are feeling and to engage as many people as we can. So since this process has started, I know Byron and I have spoken to over 55 individuals. And I know he's personally gone to at least 25 surrounding businesses in the vicinity. As part of our process, we'll continue to work to be engaged. We're always a phone call away, we're always an email away, and we will always continue to work through that. It is a best practice and a standard for us to have a good neighbor agreement or a good neighbor plan communication strategy. Every jurisdiction calls it something a little bit different. But that's really a common practice with us, which is sort of an agreement to community of what our expectations are in terms of our residents that live there, what our staff are expected to provide to community, and what we expect from the community as well. So if they say, like how to address these concerns that come up, if there is concerns that come up, who do they talk to, who do they speak to, how do we have conflict resolution, how do we work through that, and how do we make sure that all those expectations are enforced of the people that live in the building and our staff and our volunteers on site as well. So it is interesting and a little complicated because this area in Lethbridge in general doesn't have a community association that we've really been able to fully connect with. So we're trying to find a good avenue and way to facilitate developing these neighborhood agreements. And that would be something maybe as part of this community engagement would be a good way of somebody, a leader in the community that could kind of be the representative for this area, just because without those community associations, we are a little, we're like personally, transparently, we're having a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out who's going to be the right person to get this information out to community. Maybe Byron can speak a little bit more about how we continue to work with other locations and kind of our community engagement strategy in general at our other sites.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Taylor. One that I can speak to is Red Deer. I spent 13 years working at the Mustard Seed downtown Calgary, and then our wonderful boss, Steve, asked me to go up to Red Deer just under 5 years ago to start operations there. And similar size community and some of the similar challenges that the city of Lethbridge faces, they also face in Red Deer. So when we opened up operations there, it was actually on Canada Day in 2016, there was another operator that had been operating a nonprofit there for the previous 25 years and couldn't continue to care for people. So we went there for some research and a lot of conversations. And right out of the gates, as we have here in Lethbridge, we started reaching out to agencies in the community that are doing similar work. So personally, I've had the opportunity to meet with a number of different leaders in the community doing similar types of work. Also have had the opportunity to meet with the Lethbridge Police and start that conversation. In each of the cities where we're located, we work with a liaison officer, and that isn't standard practice in our industry. And for instance, when we did that in Red Deer, it was apparently we were the first one to do that at a nonprofit. And I just spoke with Constable Karen Kay today with the Red Deer RCMP to confirm some of the stats and the data around crime reduction around the mustard seed. And one of the things she said to me was, she said, Byron, say this tonight, that how the Red Deer RCMP just have really appreciated the transparency and the open door policy at the mustard seed. Another thing that isn't always standard is just having an open door to the local police. And so the police are always welcome to come into our property. All of our users know that. And so we have strong relationships with them. And so we did a thing called a CEPTED, where it's called Crime Prevent. It's basically an audit looking at the environment around a building to see how you can respond to reduce crime in the neighborhood, and so to see how the environment may affect crime. And so we went into that probably within the first couple months in Red Deer. And fast forward to today, there has been an absolute transformation around that property. There used to be loitering going on all the time, people using illegal drugs constantly on that property, a lot of crime in the near vicinity. Fast forward to today, there's no loitering on the property. The police used to be called probably 10, 20 times a week. They're lucky if they're there once every 2 weeks now. And there was a considerable reduction in crime. Now that's a shelter, which is different from what we're doing here at the Ramada. But we work very, very hard at working with the whole community. So these conversations have already started here in Lethbridge. And it's our philosophy to build very, very strong relationships and to collaborate with the community around us, getting to know business owners, getting to know their names, and giving back where we can. And so that's very, very important for us. And so often it's hard to understand as a business owner or resident, but actually even as recent as this past November, where we opened a new facility in the city of Edmonton, we once again saw quite a significant reduction in crime after we opened up our building because of the high presence that we have on the property and the high accountability that we bring to each property where we're located. And so this would be no different, where we would have a very high visible presence in the community and try to help reduce and to build those relationships around the community.
So thanks for those answers. And I don't want to belabor the point. I do want to move on to our next section. I am aware of an organization, not the Mustard Seed, that has had that type of sort of neighbor engagement piece in place. And I know businesses that are neighbors to that organization that feel that really was lip service. And so I think that's something that the community here would definitely be looking to see action on, and not to hear that's a plan, but that's something that's translated into action on a consistent basis. So thanks for your answers on those. I'm going to move to some questions on community safety. So the first one that we have from being submitted to us through the survey is, who's going to be responsible for security of the proposed site, and who will be held accountable for the residents or the client's actions off-site?
Thanks, Stephen. The Mustard Seed would be responsible for the property. As I just mentioned before, we will have at least 2 staff, but 2 to 4 staff on site on the property at all times. And we have a very high bar of accountability for people. So if there was any type of illegal activity happening, people would be held accountable to those activities. And yeah, it would definitely have more people on site than a hotel would. And again, we would be doing a rigorous screening process for people coming into the building. In terms of people off of the property, we definitely cannot be held responsible for things that are going on off of the property. However, that being said, our goal is to foster deep relationships with the residential neighbors, the business owners and managers and staff around, and that they would know that they could give us a call if they need support. We would know these people by name, and when you have those deep relationships, you can hold people to a higher level of accountability.
So when we're talking about accountability, Byron, what does that mean? Does that mean like what sort of penalties or accountability would there be for someone that is creating issues within the facility, and also if there's people, residents that are creating issues outside of the facility, can those people, can they be evicted? What's the plan that way?
Thank you for the question. It would always be on a case-by-case basis. And so if there is a person that is creating a disturbance, we're gonna address that disturbance, talk to that person, and see what's going on with them. If there's illegal activity going on, it would be treated as, we would hope that any legal activity that would go on in the community, that we would notify the police about that and make sure that people are safe. Safety on this property is paramount for us. So we want to make sure that people coming and going from the building feel very safe, and the residents in the building feel safe. One of the things that kind of protects folks that are in the building is you can't just come and go up to the 6th floor and go see your friend. If you live on the 6th floor, you have to meet your friend down in the lobby. And what that does is it protects someone that may be escaping from a domestic violence situation. And also it allows us the opportunity to see who's coming and going from the building, and really helps us address those situations. So we would do it on a case-by-case basis if there are issues, similar to another multi-tenant building. If you have a tenant that is creating a disturbance, keeping other people up at night, damaging the property, etc., I'm sure their landlord would also have hard questions for them. In this scenario, we'd have pretty deep-rooted relationships with these folks. And because of that, we can call into that high accountability to make sure that they're the right person for that community.
I might just add quickly to that, Byron, as well, is that the residents in the building will be assigning leases and house rules and expectations, which are pretty comprehensive. And there is an expectation of behavior and integration into the residential community, both within the building and the general community outside of the building as well. And there is a lot of expectation of how they will sustain their housing. So if there is if there is behaviors that are representing themselves that are going to threaten their tenancy, we have a lot of conversations with them about it. Each resident is assigned a case manager that'll continue to work with them to make sure that they're reaching their goals of housing and also all their goals towards things like community involvement, all those types of activities. So we really hold them, even when Byron says just much like a standard multi-tenant building, we would have way higher expectations and responsibility for the residents in that building, much more than a standard landlord-tenant relationship. So it'll be very dynamic. It'll be very much about conversation and making sure that they understand the consequences of their actions. And yes, there is possibilities of eviction if there's circumstances that pertain to it. We don't really accept violent behavior. We don't accept illegal use of substances. Many actions like that will have consequences. So we try to work to avoid eviction at all costs because we don't like to evict into homelessness, but there is many circumstances where that could be the case. So we all just want to ensure the safety of all the residents in the building and everyone around us as well. So,
Thanks for that. Are your residents allowed to smoke in the units?
no. Sorry, short answer, but no.
So given that, is there a concern around people loitering or sort of milling about the property, and what that looks like from an outside perspective and how that can be dealt with? Any plans for that, or strategies you put in place elsewhere?
We actually do have plans to put a smoking room in the interior of the building to help retain some of that. Of course, people have personal freedoms similar to all of us. So if they wanted to go have a cigarette outside, we probably wouldn't stop them, but we would suggest for them to be using that interior space.
And sort of loitering in general, is that dealt with in any fashion by Mustard Seed?
Yeah, Stephen, on all of our properties across Western Canada, we work very hard at eliminating loitering. Again, to be a good neighbor, we don't want to have groups of people hanging around the buildings. That's not what you want, whether it's a commercial or residential or industrial area. So we work very, very hard at not allowing loitering on our properties. And for instance, Red Deer as a case study, when we went there was, I'd say, anywhere from 20 to 100 people that would hang out on the property for most of the day. And you fast forward to today, the longest someone's going to hang out on the property is probably 10 or 15 minutes, and they're coming for a support or a service. So we just, we just don't allow that loitering.
All right, we're going to move along to resources and operations. So first of all, when do you expect to be able to open this site, assuming you get the rezoning?
Thanks for that, Stephen. Based on our anticipated timelines, we're hoping to be occupying the building in November of 2021. All things go well, but we know that there's delays that can occur, but that's likely when we're hoping to have occupancy of the building.
All right, we had a question come in from the survey around the sort of the classification of the facility being a sober facility as opposed to a dry facility. And can you talk about why that is, why that distinction is being made, and why residents are required to be showing sober behavior versus having completed like a detox type program?
Thanks, Stephen. Yes, we do require when people come into this building, again, to reiterate that this is not a treatment center, it's not a recovery center. And so it's not an appropriate place to come to detox or to sober up. But it is a sober living facility. And so there may be some individuals that have chosen substance in their life, and this will be an environment where we provide a safe space for them. But at the same time, it also provides dignity to people to choose to have a glass of wine in their apartment, in their private space, just like many of us have that luxury. We try really hard at the Mustard Seed to have the same, like Taylor said, to have the freedom to go out and have a cigarette, the freedom for somebody to have a beer or have a glass of wine in their personal residence. We would offer those same choices to people. We would just ask that when they're in a community space that they would not be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, because there may be some people that are choosing sobriety, are fighting for sobriety. And so we want to make sure that all the community spaces are a sober living environment. So yeah, but there would probably be a lot of people in the building that do not struggle with substance use struggle. And so it's kind of meeting people where they're at, but at the same time providing dignity and giving them choice and freedoms.
Perfect.
Thanks very much. Stephen, you're unmuted. Do you want to add to that?
I was just going to share the story a little bit about our 1010 building in Calgary. And when it was originally built, it was intended to be a dry building, and it is 224 units. So it's a much larger building, and by and large, it's a very sober environment. But after I became CEO, I said, well, I want us to be authentic. And if it's dry, it's dry. If it's not dry, we need to say it's not dry. And sober was the best word we could come up with, of saying this is the kind of behavior we expect in this building. And so I asked the facility guys, I said, okay, you're the guys that take out the garbage. Are you finding any bottles? And they said, well, come on over here. And they had lots and lots of bags of bottles, in which we turned them all in and had a party. But the reality is that there are floors in our 1010 building, and there will likely be floors in this building that are completely dry, because those individuals need that environment. And so, as Byron said, it's an affordable housing building. Therefore, it's just like you and I. And if I could have a glass of wine in my home, why can't they have a glass of wine in their home if alcohol is not their addiction? So that's the position we take. We try to honor people for who they are, and we want to be authentic as well, and say, we don't want to say it's a dry building when there are individuals that are having a drink or having a beer, watching a game on a Saturday night. So that's sort of been our position.
Thanks. I think it really helps to be direct on that point, for sure. One of our participants tonight has a question on operations, Sandra Dufresne. Sandra, do you want to unmute and go ahead?
Great, thanks very much, Stephen. And thank you to the three of you from the Mustard Seed. I am appreciating this conversation. My question is with regards to your staffing model, and you've addressed that a little bit, but I'm curious of what the staffing model will look like. And the reason I ask that is Lethbridge College would be happy to work with the Mustard Seed to align what your needs are with our program graduates. And I think there's some real opportunities here for some work integrated learning opportunities and practicums. So in the event that that kind of partnership can be developed, What does your staffing model look like? Thank you.
I couldn't unmute fast enough, Sandra. We love working with practicum students across all of our sites. We have multiple practicum students that are utilized at many of our different sites. It's actually something that I've seen over the last 3 years at the Mustard Seed grow and flourish, and Byron will be able to speak to it, and Steve as well. It's absolutely fantastic to be able to educate people, especially when they're young. We're really trying to remove the stereotypes and some of the biases that come with people that may be experiencing poverty and homelessness, and it's a really great way to start. So our staffing model, as Byron mentioned, is about 2 staff on site minimum at all times, which is the 24/7 model. But likely most hours of the day, at least 18 hours of the day, we'll probably have like 4 to 5 staff a day. We'd likely be looking for people that have a social work background, have a counseling background, maybe an addictions counseling background, or some type of background like that. Because of the population that we serve, we also look for people that have cultural experiences and Indigenous backgrounds as well, just to be able to support the community that we serve. We'll also have some facilities staff on site as well, just to be able to help keep up with the appearance of the building. And maybe Byron, you could speak a little bit more to what our hiring model would be there as well.
Yes, thanks, Taylor. Sorry, I was taking a couple notes. I didn't maybe comprehend everything that you said. Did you talk about the different types of staffing supports that we would have? Yeah, so we would have advocacy and employment coach, counseling on site. And we thank you for your question, Sandra. We I think last year, if I remember correctly, we hosted over 500 students at the Mustard Seed across our cities in terms of practicum, summer internships. In our second year of operation at Red Deer, we became the #1 receiving agency for the social work program at Red Deer College. Also for the nursing faculty as well. Strong relationships with, we've actually hosted University of Lethbridge students in our Calgary 1010 building as well. And so we work very, very hard providing capacity for the community to get involved. And one of the things I didn't mention off the hop just quickly is last year we had 115,000 volunteer hours across the Mustard Seed. So that is, including the whole community for us, is absolutely paramount. And so we strive to, any type of program or service that we have, we want to have the community involved in that, and we want the community to have ownership in that as well. And so we're always looking for opportunities to engage the community and really love working with post-secondary institutions. So we would love to do that with Lethbridge College. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Maybe what I'll do then is just connect Byron with you and with Taylor offline from this presentation, and we can see where that can go. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I think I've already been in touch with somebody at the college, so I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sandra. I have another question from one of the participants, Kayla Carraza, related to sort of additional services that might be available. Kayla, do you want to unmute and go ahead with that? Or do you want me to do it? You want me to do it? Okay. So the question is, what type of business center will be there, if any? Something to help people seeking employment, computer access, mental health supports, that type of thing. Is there any plans for that? And if so, can you let us know?
Yes, we will have an employment coach on site, and our employment coaches do a number of things kind of along the spectrum of trying to help a person find a fulfilling career. So right from meeting with the person, seeing kind of what their interests, their dreams and goals are in terms of a career and not just a job. And so we work with them to try to align what their aspirations are with a career, then start supporting them with a resume and building a resume with them. On a lot of our public access computers across our cities, we have programs on there that our volunteers run to help people build resumes. Also, our employment coaches work in the community to network with local businesses to see if they may have some capacity to hire some of the folks that would be living in the building, because everyone in the building needs to have an income, and many of those people would be working part-time, full-time. And so that employment coach would be building and networking relationships in the community. We've done a lot of things around helping folks with employment. We've hosted job fairs before. In Calgary, the last time we held a job fair, I think it was in early 2019, we had hundreds of people come and had about 15 employers on site that did 15-minute interviews with people, and I think over 50 people were hired on site. And so we would provide that on a small scale, one-on-one, helping people. Also, we would have a counselor on site, whether that be a learning opportunity for a graduate counseling student who would be supervised, or it could potentially be a counselor or a psychologist. We have both counselors and psychologists on staff in our other locations. And so we would provide one-on-one counseling support to that person to help them navigate their mental health and their overall health. And also our advocate, it's kind of a term that not a lot of people know, is I like to call them a bridge builder or door opener. And that advocate could help that person maybe get connected again to their family and reestablish relationship with their family, maybe finding them appropriate income if maybe they're not on an appropriate income stream. They really just help open doors and help provide a voice to maybe someone that doesn't have a voice. And so they're a very, very valuable asset at the Mustard Seed, and other agencies have very similar types of supports as well. So we will have those 3 different types of professionals on site at the Romanes affordable housing site.
Great, thanks. One of our past presidents, Ryan Miller, has a little bit of experience with employment programs, and he wants to follow up on that. So Ryan, go ahead.
Sure. First, thank you very much, Mustard Seed, for taking the time tonight. Very informational and great that we learn what you're looking to do and what you're trying to accomplish. Byron, I'll reach out after this to you and your team as well, but through our Career Center, we provide employment programming through on behalf of the provincial and federal government. And the exciting thing that I'm hearing from what you're talking about tonight is one of the essential things to be able to qualify, and these are free programs helping Albertans get working, is they need to have stable accommodations, a set address, stable accommodations. And that's what the disconnect are for many folks in these situations. So very much look forward, and I'll reach out after and we'll connect to be able to go ahead and bring some of our programming to the availability of the people that are there, in that cooperation of working back and forth. So look forward to talking more.
Thank you, Ryan. And yeah, so even though we have an employment coach on site, we would want to look to the services that are already established in the community and not try to reinvent the wheel. So that sounds great. Just one other note around employment before we move on is last year, 485 people gained employment through the Mustard Seed across our cities. And so that's something that's very, very important for us as well. Again, helping them become sustainable members of the community.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Ryan, for that follow-up on. Just before I leave the resources or operations section of our questions, I had one more question, and I apologize to the person that submitted the question. I'm kind of phrasing it in a way that makes more sense maybe for me. The question is, how do you determine who is eligible to be a resident, and what sorts of information do you look at? What's your process as you go through and vet those people? You talked a little bit before about interviewing and that sort of thing. What are you looking at? You know, how difficult is that process? What information do you need? How do you decide who's eligible?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Maybe I'll speak a bit to eligibility. Eligibility for affordable housing is pretty standard across the board. We have to meet a lot of expectations of the federal government, the provincial government, and even on the municipal level as well, of what we define as affordable housing and what we define as people in core need. So there's a lot of ways to look into eligibility, especially income-wise. So we look to CMHC, for example. I know Stephen Weil, our CEO, mentioned that we're looking to support people in a rent geared to income model. But that also means that they can only make an X amount of dollars per year. And based on a lot of our experience with affordable housing, we do support a lot of people that are on limited income, on income supports or disability payments, things like that, AISH. It was really interesting. I was reading into the community wellbeing and safety needs assessment just earlier again today in the city of Lethbridge, and they were citing an increased caseload for people that were accessing AISH supports in Lethbridge, and more people that were accessing supports based on development disabilities. So it is really interesting what the future will hold in terms of people needing access to affordable housing. But we also look across all different levels of what the municipal would expect in terms of eligibility. Obviously, developing this type of programming, we consulted with the city of Lethbridge based on what they need from the municipal housing strategy, what type of housing needed to be supported, as well as just our fellow social service providers. But the eligibility for this program is relatively simple. We're not supporting youth in this site, so they have to be 18 years of age or older. They have to meet the core need income threshold that's defined by the province of Alberta in Lethbridge, which means for a bachelor unit, their income threshold is $30,000 a year. That's the 2020 numbers, so they update those every year. I've seen a couple comments about this, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but to be eligible, they must have proof of income. That can come from a number of sources. That could be EI, that could be income supports, that could be part-time, full-time work, things like that. But just all different levels of what we would define as income, similar to how you would do on your taxes. To be eligible, they must understand, sign, and comply with the residential services agreement, which is our lease, and the house rules and expectations, which is sort of what we've talked about before in terms of behaviors and expectations for living in the residence. To be eligible, they must agree to a sober lifestyle and comply with any necessary testings for sobriety, and respect that sober lifestyle for people that are wanting to live in a dry environment as well. And they must be able to physically, mentally, emotionally, and hygienically care for themselves. So it isn't just supported living where we're cooking meals for people, where we're providing housekeeping, those types of things. It is very much independent living. If they cannot do that for themselves, they must have those arrangements made for them, such as home care, occupational therapists that may come help in that site. So those are kind of our eligibility rules in a nutshell. And then there is those income thresholds as well, which we work with just all the levels of governments across Canada, just to determine, to make sure that people that really need the housing and deserve the housing are in that site.
All right, thanks. Thanks very much. So we're going to move into the last portion of the questions that are really directed more towards the city of Lethbridge. And as I go through them, if you want to, Byron or Stephen or Taylor, if you want to weigh in on these, you certainly can. I thought it's important to at least put these out there, as I think the mustard seed should know what questions are being circulated around. I doubt that they're going to come as very much of a surprise to you if you've been doing this in other jurisdictions. But you know, these are really things that the city will need to address, certainly as to a few of these. The first one was about property taxes. We've already dealt with that, so we don't need to revisit that. The second is, how is the city going to ensure our neighborhood stays safe? Is the city going to lower my taxes when this affects the value of our neighborhood? And how are they, I assume that means the city, going to manage transient populations and crime, since other sites in the city have experienced this? So I don't know if you want to address any of the sort of threads that come up in that question or not. If not, I will.
Well, I can speak to our 1010 building that's in Calgary. My background there is a 4-story building that's adjacent to our 12-story affordable housing tower. and which is directly south of the Calgary Tower. As Steve mentioned before, that's a much larger building. It'll be about 3 times the size of the building. I encourage you, if you're in Calgary, the next time you're there, to drive by the property, and you'll see a property that is very, very clean, well maintained around it. You don't see large groups of people standing around the outside. When you go by, you see a couple people, you see a few staff and volunteers, and people pulling up to the community to drop off donations, even though that wouldn't be happening at this site. So all of our properties, we strive to have a very, very clean exterior, being very good neighbors. And so again, we see crime often come down in most neighborhoods where we are because of our high presence. And so we will do everything we can to keep the community safe. And just to quote Constable Karen Kay from Red Deer today, just that, she said earlier to me on the phone today that what changed everything in that neighborhood, which was the lowest income neighborhood in Red Deer, was the strong relationships that we built with that local community and with the local police. And so we will do that here in Lethbridge as well, to make sure that we do everything we can to maintain a very clean and safe property.
Thanks, Byron. And just before we go forward anymore, to address a question from Lane Whipple to sort of everybody in the chat room. My understanding is that although we do have at least a couple of representatives of council with us this evening, His Worship Mayor Spearman, and also I think Councillor Blaine Higgin is with us as well. Because the matter is currently before the city, I don't believe the city can actually weigh in and provide answers to these questions. We certainly don't expect that this forum is a forum that the city is going to be providing answers to those. The opportunity to do that will come later. As noted, there's a public hearing that's been scheduled now in February. And so that's going to have to wait until then. So to move forward with some of these other questions that are kind of directed to the city end of things. The second one, again, talks about compensating homeowners for decreased value of their homes. There's also a question by this same person about additional policing. I don't know if that relates to costs of additional policing or resources being directed towards being around the facility. That's something the police would have to deal with. Third question along these lines is whether there have been any studies done as to how many homeless we have in Lethbridge without addictions. And this person also asked, how long has this been planned? And I would assume that means how long has the Mustard Seed been planning for this particular project? I don't know if you want to address those or not.
Yeah, Stephen, maybe I can speak a little bit at least to the first question, is that the city of Lethbridge has done a really good job doing some research and investigating into all the needs of citizens of Lethbridge as a whole. So looking at the social services, looking at the housing available. I think we've referenced a few, the municipal housing strategy, and as well as the community well-being and safety strategy. Those were two integral documents that were really allowing us to understand the perspective of and the unique circumstances that Lethbridge citizens were facing. So there's some really unique items that came out of there. There's also the point in time count that came out. The last one was 2018. Unfortunately, the 2021 got canceled just because of COVID. It would have been great to have that information just to understand how the homeless population has changed. A great reminder in this kind of conversation is that we're not just talking about people experiencing homelessness. We're talking about people that are experiencing poverty, that are living paycheck to paycheck, may have just been dealing with a lot of situations where they keep losing their job. Income security in the economy now is ever changing these days, and just recognizing that the homeless, like obviously in Lethbridge and many other major cities, we do see homelessness on a pretty large scale, and we see it on our streets, but most of the homelessness that occurs is hidden. People that are sleeping in their cars, people that are couch surfing, in and out of residents and bumping around from low income to low income housing. So just reminding people that that number is usually much larger. And while there is definitely many cases where people have been facing addictions or maybe having that trauma that results in addictions, that is likely not the only reasons why many people are experiencing homelessness or poverty or income disparity. And just reminding that there is many situations and circumstances that we're in, and especially with this past year in COVID and how many lives are being changed every day, recognizing how easy it is for people to slip below that poverty line. So this housing is meant to be affordable. It's meant to help people that are just really struggling to make ends meet, and just people that are spending way too much of their incomes per month on shelter. So that's part of why the National Housing Strategy developed, and all these municipal strategies and provincial strategies all across Canada are aiming to support those people that just need a leg.
Thanks, Taylor. Byron, someone on the chat has asked about, I think they want to fact check you. They've asked about your source for statistics with crime going down in Red Deer and Edmonton near sites. Just real quick, can you give us an answer on that?
Yes, it's not posted on the internet, but the one for Red Deer, I spoke with Constable Karen Kay today on the phone. I've known her for the last 4.5 years in Red Deer. And the three stats that she gave me today was comparing after we'd been in operation for a full year, the following year. And this is in coordination with the RCMP. It's not just the mustard seed. The RCMP did a really good pinpoint response to crime in that community where we're located. Break and enters went down. This is comparing 2018 to 2017. Break and enters went down 60% in the community. Mischief went down 30%. Theft, motor vehicles went down 35%. And another interesting stat was that the trespass orders went up 170%. And what Constable Karen Kay said to me today, should that really show that the mustard seed holds people accountable. So the previous operator very rarely trespassed people in emergency situations, where again, we hold people accountable. So if there's crimes happening, we're going to call people into account and call the police. And so those are the numbers from the Red Deer RCMP from today on a phone conversation. The second one comes from the Edmonton Police Service. We opened up a new, again, this is a shelter that we opened. It's not affordable housing, but a shelter that we open up in the community of Ritchie on the south side of Edmonton on December 1st, 2020, just this past winter. The average crime in this community of Ritchie from January to November was 23 crimes. And the stat came to us halfway through December, on December 15th. There was 4 reported crimes in the first 2 weeks of operations around the mustard seed in the community of Ritchie and in Edmonton. I've asked them for the full stats for the whole month of December, but to go from an average of 23, which would be, about 12 or 13 crimes for half of a month, down to 4. And the Edmonton police came to a community meeting and said, we are so happy to see this decrease in crime and thank the mustard seed. And we've even had some people that were maybe against us coming to that community that are now saying, thank you for following through with what you said. And that's what we want to do. As Stephen mentioned earlier, sometimes there's lip service. The mustard seed, our goal is to build trust and build a relationship with all of you in the community, and to follow up with what we are saying to you today, to be transparent and to build those relationships. Thank you.
Well, those stats directly contradict what I've seen from people on Facebook, so I don't know what to believe anymore. Sorry, it's my sense of humor. So a couple of other questions here that we can probably get through really quick. First one is businesses that request zoning changes to non-permitted or non-conforming uses are mostly rejected. Why should the mustard seed request be different? I wouldn't expect Mustard Seed to provide an answer to that. That's something that the city's going to deal with. And the last question was, will the city guarantee the residents increased future value of property, no increase in crime, drugs, arrests, vagrancy in this area? And if the proposal goes ahead and this does happen, will the city buy back the property and rezone for hotel again? And I guess we'll have to wait and see what the answer is on that. So with that, that is going to take us to closing remarks by Stephen Weil. Sorry, we were supposed to get to this a couple minutes ago. Stephen, as Lawrence O'Donnell would say, I guess you get the last word on this. If you can provide us with some closing remarks.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, from our perspective at the Mustard Seed, we are very thankful to the Chamber of Commerce, as well as each one of you that have taken a couple hours out of your evening to talk with us and listen. We believe this is what real community engagement looks like. It's dialogue, it's communication, it's talking through issues, it's facing problems head on. And we're just excited that the city at large, and I mean the residents of the city, are concerned about these issues, because we need to be concerned about our fellow human beings. We need to be concerned of whether or not they have a place to live. It's interesting because a lot of what we've talked about, some of the things that we have sort of compared it to, our shelter system is quite different than our low-income housing, and it's a different environment. And one of the reasons why we didn't want to be downtown is that we wanted to be able to separate some of these people from an environment that would be pulling them back into their potential addictions or their poor relationships. I wanted to comment on the lip service comment you made, Stephen. Yes, some of you are saying, oh yeah, this sounds so great, but what will reality look like? Well, we truly trust that reality will look like what we have been describing the last hour and a half. We have one purpose with two tenets. Our purpose as the Mustard Seed is to eliminate homelessness and reduce poverty in the cities we serve. And at the crossroads of both of those is housing. Because if we can get people into housing, we can move them from, the shifting sand of homelessness or inadequate housing to, that foundational place where they can start building a life. And so that's the reason why we're here. That's the reason why we want to build this apartment building. We at the Mustard Seed, we have 5 values. And those values are what we compare ourselves to. And those 5 values are transparent accountability. We want to be accountable for who we are and what we do, and we want to be as transparent as possible. We don't like avoiding questions. We want to address them straight on. Holistic innovation. We want to look at new ways of solving problems. And we think that this hotel is somewhat innovative in providing a secure home for somebody. A third value is open communication. You will find, as Byron or Taylor referred to, good neighbor agreement. We're very open to good neighbor agreements in all of the communities we're in. The problem with this area is there doesn't seem to be a community association that could be in dialogue with us about that. But we're really interested in open communication. Christ-centeredness. We are a Christian faith-based organization. It does not affect who we serve. We serve everyone in need. But we believe we're called to a lifestyle in which we serve others based on the life of Christ. And respect for all. We feel very strongly that we are all human beings made in the image of God. We're all valuable, every one of us, whether we're living or sleeping in a gutter or whether we're living in a penthouse. And because of the intrinsic value of people, we want to show respect to everyone. So hopefully when we come into Lethbridge, that we will discover that there are thousands of other people that share at least some of these values with us as we move forward to, try to make a difference and be transformative in the lives of people who don't have as much as most of us who are on this call tonight. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your lives for a few minutes. And we look forward to this adventure together.
Thanks very much, Stephen. So as we draw to a close this evening, I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this event. Wasn't sure how much sort of audience participation we would get, but certainly the chat room has been active with chats to the whole group, but also individual or directed chats. And I thank you all for that. Regardless of what happens with this proposed development, no one can say that the community wasn't given an opportunity to hear about the issue and to ask questions of the mustard seed. So I'd like to thank Stephen Weil, Byron Bradley, and Taylor Kawaguchi, and the mustard seed for being here with us tonight. Whether you favor their proposal or you're opposed, you have to give the mustard seed credit for their approach and for not shying away from the public on this. Finally, I'd like to thank the Chamber's CEO, Cindy Boss, and her staff for putting this together and for making sure that everything works well with the technology, and also for not scheduling this on the first night of the 2021 NHL season. And with that, I'm going to throw it over to Cindy for a couple of scheduling notes. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I'm glad I didn't interfere with too many sporting events, so this worked out quite lovely. Thank you once again to everybody that participated tonight. It's always our goal to make sure we get as much engagement as possible, and we will be reviewing the survey, and thank you for the information that you've shared tonight. Like Stephen said, either through the chat line, to the group, or individually, I really appreciate that. We did talk earlier about another event because we did get feedback that, why was this one reaching capacity? And we were thrilled. We didn't realize we would reach capacity, but we did. So there's going to be another. Is it all right if I announce it, Byron?
Yes, absolutely. We have it on our website already.
Oh, wonderful. So there's going to be another one next week, January 19th. So it's on the website, and in a follow-up, I will, in an email where I share different information from tonight, I'll make sure that link is in there as well. That way, if you know anybody that missed it, or if you want to chime in again, there'll be another opportunity there as well. I'd also like to invite you to our State of the City address, which we're holding on January 27th. Our mayor will be giving the message, and that will be an opportunity. By then we'll have submitted a bunch of the questions that the chamber has organized, and I'm sure that a lot of these issues, and we'll maybe get some answers during that address. So please sign up for that event. And we're also looking at holding one just on community well-being strategy first week of February, just so we can continue to communicate about this, because the chamber did, we took our economics of addiction policy municipally, provincially, and federally, and we feel it's important for us to continue to follow through on that and work with our city and get that strong strategy going for everybody. So thank you once again. Thank you to the board members and the chair for all your support, and for Mustard Seed coming, and Stephen for doing a bang up job, and the staff for helping us organize this all. Have a wonderful evening. It's still early. It's only 8. We're only 4 minutes over. This is fantastic. So thank you so much. And don't be afraid to reach out. I appreciate all the questions and all the time that you've given us tonight. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks so much.